Okay, so this video is long overdue. I created this fan art piece for Holly Brown. This is her comic Paranormal Plague, and I actually completed this a while ago, but I'm just now getting around to editing this footage together. But in this video, I actually wanted to talk about confidence. As I was working on this piece, it was something that was kind of in the back of my mind, both on the good and bad spectrum of things, and I just wanted to sort of discuss it in this video while you guys get to watch, the entire creation process of this artwork. So let's go ahead and get started. So I know the video starts kind of abruptly. I hadn't really planned on recording the entire process for this at all. This was just something I was doing for fun, but as I worked on it more and started seeing, how it was developing into sort of the actual idea that I had in my head, I thought it would be good content to share with you guys. So you can see now I'm working on Princess, and if you saw her in the beginning, she looked a little out of whack. Just, she didn't look like herself. That's something that definitely was a struggle for almost each of the characters, just trying to make them look like themselves. And I also struggled with just their poses in general. You can see I'm working on her hands and trying to, figure out how things are supposed to go. But working on all of this has really showed me that I'm actually capable of doing something like this. You know what I mean? I rarely ever draw a character that's, like a full body, let alone draw 4 characters that are full body and a background. I draw a background eventually. But, yeah, so you can see here, like, I fixed her arm because I thought it looked a little weird. I feel like it's a lot of pushing and pulling with things. I'll start, I'll do the initial sketch, and then I'll go back and kind of define it a little more, or refine it, I guess I should say. But this is just something I wanted to show you because, especially when I first started recording my drawing and everything, I was really nervous. I know I'm not drawing like live or anything, but it's the fact that you guys get to see, all of the mistakes that I make before you see the finished product. It's very, it makes you feel very vulnerable, but as I, did this more and more every day, just worked on this little by little, it got easier. So when I worked on this, I still had my full-time job in retail, and I was only able to work on this for about an hour every night. So because I could only work on it for that long, the progress on the drawing and everything was very slow. It was a very slow process. I think after I, completed everything and I had all of my footage, I had about maybe 70 plus hours worth of footage that I knew was going to be hell to speed up and to edit through. Real quick, I just wanted to talk about Ash, because I know I'm working on her right now. You can kind of see, I kind of messed with her face a lot. Before I fixed it, it looked kind of weird. At the time, when I first drew it, I thought it looked really nice, but then looking back on it now and watching it in the video, I was like, yeah, it doesn't look all too great. So you'll see me, this is another thing with the confidence thing, that you'll see me, kind of nitpick her face a little bit, mostly her nose. I think I had her nose down like at the very beginning, but then as I started changing things, it just looked wrong to me, and so every now and again I'll go back and fix it until eventually I figure it out and settle with whatever I had. And you see me there just messing with her, what are they, tights, her leggings or whatever. I tried to give her different color leggings than what Holly did, but I thought the original colors looked really nice, or they looked better anyway. So I will say that I think because the process was so slow, because I, did this in like little increments, it actually helped me a little, because I would work on a little section and then, come back the next night, and then I could see the entire piece with like fresh eyes, and so I could really figure out what it is I wanted to work on. Or maybe there are times where you'll probably see like little notes written by the characters, or written on the drawing in general. Those are notes that I made to myself over the night before. That way when I come back to it the next night, I know what it is I need to work on. Oh, I guess I should also mention, because I did have so much footage to go through, if you randomly see just elements of the background pop up, so like the colors of the background, I know they kind of popped in a while ago, and maybe some other elements that you didn't see me draw, that's just because I cut that out. I wanted it to be more focused on the characters, and then, the sort of right now I'm working on like a little graffiti sticker. Well, not a graffiti sticker, but a sticker, and then like the graffiti on those little like power boxes or whatever they are that are usually on the side of buildings. So if you see elements just pop up randomly, that's why. But on the topic of confidence and everything, I know that's what I was supposed to be talking about. I'm not really sure if I even like managed to talk about anything, but I just wanted to say that throughout the whole, like, drawing everything and seeing it done, like I said, it showed me that I can actually do something this complicated. Not to mention that this was it was a good project for me to help develop my skills, my digital art skills. I mean, I feel pretty comfortable with drawing in general, whether it's traditional or digital. But coloring is, kind of a different thing. I feel like I'm a little bit better at it with traditional drawing or traditional coloring. But for digital, I still feel like I'm in that high school phase of like whenever you're drawing anime, and then whenever you're trying to shade things, everything's very smooth and like airbrushed. It tends to look very plasticky, and I knew that's something I didn't want for this, because I wanted it to look like a comic book, or at least have like that comic book feel to it. So with the help of some tutorials online and just sort of experimenting on my own, I find that a good mix of blended soft edges and hard edges really help you achieve that look. I watched a lot of videos on YouTube on how to color comics. There was a technique that, called cut and grad, that uses the selection tool and gradients, but Paint Tool Sai doesn't have gradients, at least the first version doesn't. That's what I use. I use the first version. So I kind of have to, do that on my own, and so I just use, I think I just use the brush tool. It's either the brush tool or the watercolor tool to blend things together. Sometimes the airbrush tool. But anyway, here I'm working on Herschel. I actually wanted to just comment that I really like the way his shoes came out. I guess just because there's attention to detail. Like I did the little eyelets, or that's what they're called, right? Eyelets, those like little metal things that hold the shoelaces. I did the eyelets, and I don't know, I really liked the thin and thick lines. I think I don't know, it just really made it pop for whatever reason. Here's another example of like where my confidence was kind of it was kind of iffy. I drew this hand, and the first time I drew it, like you can see me doing the line art, and I didn't like it. And then I tried to go over it again, but then it started looking weird to me, and it just wasn't turning out the way I wanted it to. Eventually I just, undo everything, and I just go back to the original, and I believe I just left it that way. I think that's where my hour ended, and I just left the line art how it was. And then the next day I came back, like I said, I looked at it with fresh eyes, and I was actually surprised by how okay it looked. Like it wasn't as bad as I thought it was the night before. And I gotta say that I'm really proud of how this entire artwork turned out, this piece, whatever you want to call it. I think there's only so many names I can give this thing. But I say that because I can't really say there's been a time in the past where I actually was satisfied with my artwork. A lot of times I would just tell myself that I needed to work on, this or that. But I feel like this year has been a little bit different. Just, I can see the improvement, and although there's always room for, for growth. I mean, I'm not saying this is where my art is going to stay. It's just gotten to a point now where it's like I have an idea and I can sort of execute it properly and make it look how I want it to. Of course, in the beginning, it's always going to be rough. I mean, you saw the sketches. I wish I could have shown you the sketches of the other characters. Herschel was especially hard. I actually drew him a few times in my sketchbook just because I couldn't get his face right. And I think it had something to do with maybe with his not crooked nose, but how his nose kind of juts out, and then he has that little wispy bit of hair that sort of juts out a little bit. I know Holly draws it like a really long strand, but because I draw somewhat semi-realistically, I don't even know if I would call this like semi-realistically. I think this is more like comic book stuff. I don't know, but I draw the way that I draw, and I like to sort of have an element of reality in it. So I kind of toned down his hair. But I'm able to, get them to look how I want, is basically what I was trying to say. There are still times where I doubt myself, especially at the beginning when I'm sketching things and it's going through that ugly phase. You just have to sort of get through it, as crappy as it sounds. I mean, I'm not to the point where I can, sit down and draw for 30 minutes and have it look like a masterpiece or anything like that. It definitely takes me some time and some effort to make it look good. But I can definitely see that I'm improving, and the fact that I was able to do something like this really made me feel better about myself as an artist. And this has led me to focus more on my art just in general, and to focus on my YouTube, to start my YouTube channel, the channel that I've always wanted to make, that was nothing just but art videos and all that stuff. And who knows, maybe later on down the road, if I can get enough people to watch me or something, I can start selling my artwork, and getting paid to draw. That's like the dream right there. For a long time, I've watched artists on YouTube make it and, get their stuff out there. And I feel like I have some, stuff to contribute to the community. I'm not really looking to be famous or rich. Like I said, I just want to do what it is that I'm passionate about, share it with you guys, maybe teach you guys something. I'm not a teacher, but I mean, maybe if I can help in some shape or form, that would be great. Make some friends, make money so I can pay my bills and not live on the street in a box, that'd be great. But so yeah, this whole thing was just an entire it was a journey, we'll put it that way. It was quite the journey. I mean, a lot of emotions going into this. A lot of times where I'm just like, it's not looking great. And then I felt pretty confident with the characters themselves. Like, I was like, I can do that. But then tackling that background, man, I don't normally draw backgrounds, but I knew for something like this, it was kind of necessary because I didn't want the characters to just be floating there. Not only that, though, I wanted them to look like they were in that world that they live in, so there's not really a lot to go off of. I just used, you know, what we had and what I think the world is like, and then sort of like her, how, I think in some of her videos or maybe in live streams she's described, you know, sort of what the world is like, or at least what the world is inspired from. You know, 'cause she lives in Texas and so do I, so I mean, it's not like I was trying to make the background look like exactly like something from Texas, but I'm rambling now. But anyway, so you can see that brick texture just came out of nowhere, right? Like, that took forever. Wasn't even sure how I was going to do that, but thank God for the line art tool, or the, what is it, the line tool? The vector lines in Paint Tool Sai, because that was a nightmare to do. It's kind of annoying how Paint Tool Sai doesn't have that feature where if you hold shift down, it creates like a solid straight line for you, like it just locks it into place. I think in order for me to make a straight line, I actually had to go on Google and like get a grid, and you know, one that was already, everything was already straight, and then I just sort of had to line up the lines, and then I just sort of copied everything and pasted it down until I covered the entire wall. And you can see there too, I think, well, it's kind of zooming in and out. I'm looking at the little viewfinder thing, but there's branches and leaves and stuff, and there's a little monster in the window. I guess I can talk about the coloring though. You might be able to catch that Herschel is actually already shaded, and if you can at some point during the video, maybe just pause it and just look at him, because he was my first attempt at shading again. I haven't digitally colored like this in a while, and so it's a lot of me trying to figure out how I like to color, how I want things to look. So that's why when I was coloring Ash, I would go back, and you could probably see Herschel, who is still shaded. I was kind of color picking off him for a little bit, but I think I recolored Herschel like 3 times. He still looked plasticky and like that weird, like waxy look. I didn't like it. So I just moved over and started with Ash just to see how that went. I loved how she came out, went over to Princess, and then I just worked on the other characters, and I just told myself that I was just going to work on Herschel last. This is another thing where, you know, I wasn't sure if it was going to turn out the way I wanted to. Again, this goes back to that confidence thing where it's like, I know what I want it to look like, but then it's like, do I have the skill to make it look that way, I guess? I don't know, but I find that that coloring clothes, like I'm doing with Princess's overalls right here, that's the hard part for me. I think skin and hair, like I'm more comfortable with coloring those things, but with clothes, they're a little different. Just with skin, it's okay if it looks really blended, and if you have like a few sharp lines and like sort of like the dark shadows and everything, like it's okay for it to look like that. But for clothes, you need more of those, at least I feel like. I mean, this is just my opinion, in the way that I color and everything. I feel like I need more of the harsh lines, those really deep shadows to sort of make it look right. At least to stop it from looking so plasticky. You can see in Herschel's pants again, if you look at him, his pants are very like, they're not overly blended, but they're blended, and there's no, if the light was really hitting them, I feel like there'd be a lot of folds and creases, like the darkest, where the darkest shadows would be. And at the time, I just didn't have that. Here I'm working on Reese. Every time I look back at the original, I think when I take the colors off, so if it's just like the line art, I think he looks more feminine than when I actually colored him. And I honestly think that has to do with how I positioned the lighting, because I wanted the light to be from like the top center. Since his head is slightly turned, there's that shadow that's near his nose, and I feel like it kind of sort of defining his nose very harshly. It makes him look not as feminine, I guess. But I will say that if you have a character like Reese who wears black all the time, shading black is probably the hard, not, I don't know, in terms of like coloring clothes, when your character is wearing something black, it's just, for me, I feel like it's kind of difficult to shade, because it's like, well, I can't go any darker than black, and if I make it solid black, then it just looks weird or like unnatural. So you kind of have to do like these very subtle, like, like a really dark gray and then sort of like a lighter gray, and you kind of have to give the illusion, I guess, that it's black. So you can see here I'm, just getting the hang of coloring and everything. And I think eventually, because I messed up on Reese a little bit on his arm that's on, that's leaning on Ash. I think I colored on the wrong layer at some point, so you'll see me fix that. But otherwise, I think I did a pretty good job. I wasn't too sure if I made Reese too tall. I don't think there's ever really been a... Well, I know he's not introduced in the comic yet, so I wasn't necessarily sure how tall he was supposed to be. I knew Herschel was probably the tallest one, and then in the first couple of pages you see Princess and Ash together, and Ash is just slightly taller than Princess. And of course here I'm working on Reese's scars. I actually had to look up references on what scars look like. I thought they would be like a little bit darker, but turns out once they heal, I guess they're a little lighter. Oh, the height difference thing. Yeah, I wasn't sure if I made him too tall or not. I didn't think he would be as tall as Herschel. Oh, and here we can just talk about how I'm recoloring Herschel. I feel like he came out okay. Reese, that is, since we're talking about his height. But here, you'll see me recoloring Herschel for like the 500th time. But this time I actually kind of know what I'm doing. Speaking of the coloring too, I find it's kind of difficult with the way that I draw, because if you noticed for my characters, I don't draw the bottom eyelid, or at least I don't like line it. It's only just the top. With me, there was a point where I was still trying to obviously get better at drawing, and when it came to drawing eyes, I was really fixated on, more or less just say I was like a perfectionist. There was a lot of times where I just get really fixated on it, where I was just sort of overworking it too much. And so I think it just got to a point where I was just frustrated, and I was just like, you know what, I'm not going to draw the bottom eyelid anymore. Now whenever I create characters, they only have like the top, which is just like the top eyelid plus maybe like their eyelashes or whatever. And I actually really like, doing it this way. I think when it comes to coloring in their eyes though, that kind of creates issues later on. Whenever I'm sketching things, I actually do draw the eye with both the top and the bottom eyelid, but then once I start lining it and coloring in the eyes, I just leave the bottom out. Before we get any closer to the end of this video, I actually just wanted to, because I know the topic is confidence and stuff, I wanted to talk about why I chose to do this particular, I guess, piece. It's basically just me talking about Holly and how, for me, she's a really big inspiration. Back when she had her old channel, I would always, I loved watching her videos on how she made comics and just the advice she would give. I feel like she made the process of making a comic seem not so scary. I mean, there's definitely a lot of steps, a lot of work to be done, because she was sharing, you know, her knowledge and the things that she's learned along the way. It definitely made me feel like I could tackle my project, my comic that I have in mind. I know I've talked about it a few times in some of my other videos, and maybe eventually I can share maybe some character designs or something with you. That way this comic doesn't seem so mysterious. She definitely gave me like that confidence that I can do something like that. Of course it's not going to be easy. I mean, that's sort of the reason why I'm drawing this for her. I mean, I just wanted to do something nice for her because, you know, she's an inspiration to me. I really admire her. I admire her, how much she works and how much she cares about her comics and stuff like that. I think I said at the beginning, I normally don't draw fan art stuff. I'd rather just sort of work on my own things, but I was actually working on some of my character designs for my comic, and I was kind of getting a little bored, and so I started drawing her characters from memory, and I kind of liked the way they looked, and I don't know, it just sort of snowballed, and it turned into me creating this out of nowhere. And not only that, this turned into sort of a bigger project than what I thought it would be. I ended up learning a lot. I got to work on my anatomy. Not only did I get to work on, you know, just the anatomy, but the anatomy off of 4 characters, you know, both male and female. And, you know, there's different body types. Not only that, but I get to work on background elements, a little bit on perspective. That was something completely new. It's crazy what one project can help you learn, I guess. I don't know. But anyway, I just wanted to take that time to sort of gush about Holly in general, just because, like I said, she's the reason why I feel like I can pursue my comic, and just in general, I think she's a cool person. I mean, I love her sense of humor. Just every time she posts a video or she has a live stream, it's just, she always makes me laugh. So you can see now I'm trying to tackle the monster that is this background. I tried shading that sidewalk there for a minute. You can see I was trying to add texture. That was just me, you know, trying to figure it out. I mean, I knew that with materials like that, you know, that's concrete, brick and stuff, there's going to be like these little bits and pieces, and it's not going to look smooth, because again, if you shade it smoothly, it's going to look either metallic or shiny or plasticky, and that's not what I wanted. You can see now that elements of the background are just sort of popping in. This is the point where I had to cut together everything. You can see the leaves are shaded now. Coloring in, drawing all those leaves, by the way, all those branches and all those leaves, it was a pain in the ass. And then here comes the like even bigger obstacle, which was like this brick background. I actually had to reference what a brick wall, not what it looks like, but like what colored bricks are on it, because I know some are like just a solid like red color or whatever, but there's different variations in colors, and the one that I was referencing kind of had all of these different colors to it, and that's what I really wanted. And so this is me just trying to like figure out how the hell I'm gonna do this, and it was really just a matter of just, I'm gonna just put the colors down and we're just gonna hope to God it works out. You can see I changed the colors. I had to kind of skip ahead so the colors sort of change and shift a little bit. Yeah, the background was I definitely saved that for last because I knew it was going to give me the most trouble. But I find now that it's not as scary as it looks when it comes to backgrounds. I think, especially with like buildings and stuff, when it comes to drawing humans and, you know, animals, things that are like organic, those are the difficult things to draw. But stuff that's very, I guess, man-made, structured, you know, or structural things, stuff that's very like precise, like it's just a bunch of straight lines and then maybe some curves here and there or something like that, you know what I mean? It's not as difficult, but the coloring part, of course, is the hard part for me, because again, I don't want it to look boring or to look flat. I think that's like my biggest worry, is that I make something, or that I draw something and I color it and then it looks flat. So you can see I was going to individually paint each brick to have this sort of like rough texture to it, and I completely threw that idea out the window because I was like, there's no way. I was already tired of working on this for as long as I did. This took me like a couple of months to do, and I was like, I'm not about to sit here and color each individual brick. So I just started using some textures that Paint Tool Sai had, and we just called it a day. So I think we're kind of coming towards the end of the speed paint. I'm surprised I was able to talk for this long. Like I said, I hope you guys enjoyed the video, and I will see you in the next one. So, bye guys!